Okay, hello everyone. We're going to take a look at the input and output. So the installing memory, upgrading video card, right? That's going to be really important for your hands-on stuff. Then let's take a look at what is input, what is output. Input is the process of taking something in, right? It's such a huge term now that people say, well, let me give you my input. You know, really a term that started with computer technology now is a standard. Input. We don't often talk about output. But in any case, input is taking something in, output is taking something out. So a good example of output is a monitor. A good example of input is a video camera. If you're taking it in, that's an input device. If you're putting it out, that's an output device. And yes, sometimes a device can be both. And I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but you should be able to figure it out really quickly. What is an input or output device? Because you've been using them forever, right? Forever you've been using those. There they are. Learn how to classify those. Piece of cake, right? Let's take a look at some other external devices, because input and output is usually external, not always, right? You can have a camera built into a notebook, but how do we connect things to our computer that we didn't have originally? Or how do we connect some input devices? And that obviously there's a USB type A connector, which we thought was so awesome at the time, but you'll probably notice if you've worked with them a lot that you plug them in and it's like, it's never the right way. You always have to turn it over. It's like, USB-C has gotten rid of that. And I don't know if they mentioned that, but we'll take a look at it. USB-A is by far the most common type. And they really have this idea, and this is still held true, that on one end you would have an A and on the other end you'd have a B. Now, I'm not sure what the deal was with that, but these are actually easier to plug in. Maybe that was the whole deal. And they're called a D-type connector. I know it says type B, but this looks like a little D, definitely a square. They shave off these two sides, and then you can only plug that in one way, and that's usually to the other end, right? So this is the end that plugs into the printer or the scanner or the USB hub, and then this is what plugs into you on your notebook or your computer. So very, very rare would you find a USB type on your computer. Now the type C is much, much better. So wow, introduced in 2014, we just really started using it, but both ends are this reversible connector. They're just this little very oval shaped connector that you can just click and click. And they actually say, best of all, you don't need a specialized connector for each device. All ports are C and work on all ports, even Thunderbolt ports in newer devices, since the end of the C cable is symmetrical. Yeah, it's awesome. It's kind of funny because really what happened, and I don't know what the politics were behind this, but this was introduced as a USB-C, but it was really a Thunderbolt specification. And so we can thank Thunderbolt for this USB-C. And we'll take a little extra look at Thunderbolt so you'll understand what that is. And so really, when they say C, you really got Thunderbolt abilities in that, and that's a lot faster. And I think C is here to stay. So even if it grows beyond Thunderbolt, beyond Thunderdome, beyond Thunderbolt, it'll be there for a while because it's so easy to use, so much nicer to use. You got the mini USB, that's really old. So when you see that, often it's on cameras. And then the micro USB, you know, if you've had a phone that's not an Apple device, that's how you plug that in. Lots of things are powered with that now. Old stuff, FireWire, audio connections. This is an old VGA. That's a 15 pin. See how it's staggered? Video graphics array stuff. And then you will often see this DVI video. And that was in between there and HDMI. This existed. And honestly, it existed for years, but people did not get off VGA, which was an analog port. This is an analog port. And they did not move to DVI. And then HDMI came out. And so this one usually bugs people more than anything. And there's the HDMI, which we love. It's got its problems, you know, it's got issues, but that's because it was not the computer industry that did it. It's actually the TV industry. Sony pushed this a big deal, and that's why it won. RJ45, that's an RJ45 jack. This is an RJ45 plug. The RJ stands for registered jack. You'll learn about that more. And it's got a little clippy, plugs right in there. And it's wide. It's got like 8 things in it. Now, the display port is really what was pushed by the computer industry. And it's still out there. Like in business, you'll use it. And this display port can be converted to pretty much anything. And that happens a lot. Like you'll see this port, and then there's a dongle that plugs in and has an HDMI or 4 HDMIs. You can plug in tons of stuff in there. So this was the better way to go. But again, Sony pushed the other. So, and then Thunderbolt. Hey, look at that. It's a C port. Yeah, Thunderbolt. Some people think Apple made this, and a lot of people think Apple makes this. They don't. This is an Intel project, Thunderbolt. And you can look it up. I will actually put it in right here. Intel. But it was basically one of those things that there's Intel site where Intel and Apple were really, really close. There's a whole story as to why they don't use Intel now, which is really sad because they were really close to Intel. And basically what happened is Steve Jobs calls up and said, what the crap? It's the 21st century. And on the back of my computer, right, and they're building computers, I got to have the VGA, and I've got to have an HDMI, and I've got to have all these USBs, and I have to, right, there's all these different connectors. Shouldn't we have solved this problem by now? And they said, yeah, we should work on this. And so Intel actually created Thunderbolt. They're on Thunderbolt 4 now. And if you want to see the differences between Thunderbolt specification, one cable does it all, data, video, power. If it's Thunderbolt, you can plug in your monitor with it. You can provide power with it. You can connect to an external hard drive. 40 gigabits per second total bandwidth. One port, 40 gigabits. Holy cow. That is so fast. And then there's your comparison. You know, here's your USB type C, which is, you know, here's 3, right? So type C will do all these. And then your 40 gigabit bandwidth is on 4 and 3, not on USB 4 or USB 3. It's super fast. That's what we're really talking about. It's so fast. It's the one port to rule them all, but it costs a little more to put on. And so, you know, HP and the people that make these devices just go, well, I'm not going to spend the money, right? It costs 10 cents for USB. It costs 40 cents for Thunderbolt. I'm going to go with the 10-cent version. And why people think Apple did it is because Apple was involved in the beginning, but they will put Thunderbolt ports on their computers. It's just, here's a Thunderbolt port. They always give you one of those because it's so dang fast. And then the other ones will be some other USB port. So that's why people think Apple did it. Bluetooth is a big deal these days, so I wanted to mention this because we will get into Wi-Fi in this course. It operates in this band. So as it's transmitting the wireless frequency right out there, it operates between 2.4 and 2.485, which is the same frequency as your Wi-Fi does. But it's really not designed to go far. It's really designed to keep your information here. So you got a Bluetooth mouse or you got a Bluetooth headset. It's really designed not to go far. That's part of the benefit is the short range communications. Now, other things that you need to be aware of, let's see. Yes, you have USB devices that are self-powered, meaning that USB can receive up to a little bit of power, not a ton of power, but usually enough to charge your phone a little bit, like 900 milliamps or 9 amps of power. And so USB 2.0 is limited. What that comes down to is that there are USB devices that have to be plugged into a wall. So if it's self-powered USB device, it means I can just plug it in USB and it gets its power from the USB and we're great. However, you need to know as like a network tech, if I was going home and saying, I'm going to put on a drive on my computer that I'm going to use constantly, I am not going to buy a drive that's about as big as my phone. I'm going to buy one of those bigger ones because they have their own power, meaning they can spin as fast as they want, use whatever power they want from the wall, and not have to worry about not having enough from the system. And so it's very convenient to power these devices off of USB 3 and 2, but you are reducing how fast it can do something, and that's something to remember. Drivers are the piece of software that actually makes the system, the piece of hardware, work with the system. So when you plug something into your computer, you will note on Windows, it'll go, preparing device. Okay, the device is prepared. You can now use blah, blah, blah flash drive. That is because it was loading the appropriate software that will make sure that that works correctly. If your computer has no device drivers for something, then it won't be able to use it because it's like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with it. These days, so much is included. Like I got a mouse here, and I just plug that in, and the standard mouse driver works for it, and it's no big deal. Flash drives are very much the same way. Just plug that thing in, and it goes, oh yeah, I see the flash drive, and then boom, 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 I'm ready to go. It doesn't matter, Mac, Windows, Linux, that just usually just takes care of itself. But there is a driver built in that's making that happen. That's kind of the important principle here. So you plug in something that's bigger and more customizable, like a printer, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I saw that printer and I got some of the stuff to make it work, and I can't use it. Right? When you plug in something like that, then they'll tell you in the instructions, right? Follow the instructions. All right, you just got your new printer. Please download such and such using a QR code to your computer and run it. Then plug in the printer. Basically what it's saying is, hey, we're going to go ahead and download the drivers on your computer. You'll run that little setup and it'll put the drivers in that it needs. And then that way, when you plug it in, it'll have everything it needs. Otherwise, if you plug it in prior and then do that, it may not work like you want it to, right? There are some troubleshooting tips to familiarize yourself with. I talk about troubleshooting a little later. And then here's your transfer rates. And so 2.0 was 480 megabits, bits, not bytes. But that was a burst mode, so it never maintained that. If you noticed, even today, like if you can buy a USB 2.0 flash drive cheap, right? And you start copying files and it goes boom. And the copy falls off and goes down to here because it had a boost mode that it would go up to. Its standard mode of running was like 21 megabits. It's pretty slow. But USB 3.0 is a lot higher gigabits, or translated 5,000 megabits. And then 3.1 doubles that. 3.2 doubles that. A lot of systems will come with at least one of these. They're usually orange. These are usually yellow. I'm glad they're trying to follow some stuff there, but they don't have to, so they may not. Firewire was that competing thing, and again, they think that Mac made these, but that's just because Mac would put them on. They would give you that better port, and they've kind of died off. So you shouldn't really see any of this stuff anymore because they stopped using Firewire. They use Thunderbolt instead. So then notice Thunderbolt's not on there. It's not listed. Strange. All right, so we'll stop there and we'll come back to our printers. And what do we need to look at for our printers?